Welcome to another episode of Start the Week with Wisdom. I'm your host, Bridget Burns with the University Innovation Alliance.
And I am Sara Custer, Editor-in-Chief at Inside Higher Ed.
Each week, we team up to have a conversation with a sitting college president or chancellor in the field, someone who we think you should be listening to. We want to have a lighthearted conversation that is about leadership and about leading in this moment, because it comes out on Mondays, and we want to give you a soft pedal into the week. That's why we call it Start the Week with Wisdom.
And Weekly Wisdom is sponsored by Mainstay, whose mission is to provide scalable, personalized communication strategies, helping campuses engage students proactively. Learn more at mainstay.com.
It's also sponsored by the Carnegie Corporation of New York, which we are always grateful for their support. But now we are super excited to bring you a leader who we've not had a chance to previously meet with, and I'm excited to introduce you to Dr. Roslyn Artis, who is the president of Benedict College, president and CEO of Benedict College, which I'm super excited about. Is it that true? I don't know why it says CEO.
It's true. That is true.
Oh wow, that's
nice
really
to
cool.
meet you.
Nice to meet you. That's actually itself very interesting. Well,
I think it's a holdover from my predecessor, probably not attributable to my unique skill and talent, but has been historic here.
Well, I will say this is how this works: is someone else is going to see this episode and they're going to be like, "Okay, that's possible."
I think I'll add that.
Are you a CEO as well, Bridget?
Yeah.
And I'm editor-in-chief. So we got three chief ladies on the call.
Three CEOs, huh?
I love it.
I am not a doctor, but I'll admire you. Play one on television.
And I can only write a literature review. So, well, we're super excited to connect with you. And we were just chatting about how the three of us, all three, are coming back from the whirlwind of the ASU+GSV Summit. Yeah. And I think that's really important for folks to understand, because I think people see online about this conference, they hear about it a little bit, but I don't think it's widely understood fully in the space. And the experience can be very different than any other higher ed conference. So this is your first time staying for multiple days and being at the event. I'm just curious about your experience.
Well, for starters, I'm exhausted. It is overwhelming. If you are introverted in any way, it's going to be a very difficult couple of days for you. It is highly vendor driven. Everyone has an innovation that they would like to share with you and garner your support for. I was overwhelmed by the sheer number of invitations for coffee. Even I, on an alternate time zone, cannot drink as much coffee as I was offered by vendors in anticipation of the conference. People who just wanted to share their ware or their technology solution with us in hopes that we would adopt it at our institution or would spread the word to other sister institutions. So it is massive in terms of scale and scope. And certainly fast paced. It's like a cruise ship. There's something happening in every corner, on every floor, and every minute of every day, starting as early as 6 a.m. and concluding at 10 or 11 p.m.
Yep, that checks out for me. Sara, does that check out for you in terms of your experience?
100%. I feel like that lobby area and the ground floor of the Hyatt. I've probably walked 7 miles just going back and forth from either end, catching up with people, looking for people. Yeah. Maybe going outside for 5 minutes to see the sun and then going back in to have coffees and meetings and yeah.
Well, I'm curious about your high points.
It at least reflected a recognition that people were exceedingly busy, though overwhelmed. And so the little communication hubs, I call them little communication houses, the little two-person,
nice.
tech-enhanced, quiet spaces in the middle of a lot of noise, cocoons, if you will. Were well placed and heavily utilized.
Yeah.
Yes. I actually usually do a show for GSV, for presidents and anyone from the higher ed space to help them know how to navigate the event. And this year just didn't work out. They did it without me, and I think we'll try and do it again next year. Where I am always giving advice about don't register with your email. That's the invitations. Shoes. really important. Shoes are, you got to have really comfortable shoes, in a way, have a strategic strategy. Everything happens at receptions. I mean, I would say, I don't want this to sound negative, because the truth is that was the best GSV I've had in terms of the quality of the altitude of the meetings and the progress. And now I struggle with, I just came back, I have all these business cards, I've shared all this stuff, like, how do I move it forward? And I haven't unpacked from my bag, and I'm as tired as each of you are. And so I think there's a whole strategizing about that. But there were some incredible, I think, rich high points. And you and I attended an event that was just women leaders. And what I saw is, while the volume and velocity, I think, of other spaces there are too loud for I think, this community, there's clearly a hunger for people to have deep connection and to actually talk about some of the hard stuff around innovation and change. And I thought that was a high point, like, definitely all the higher ed leaders.
Yeah, I could not agree more. I always look for spaces where women are gathered, because there generally is something amazing brewing in those rooms, whether that is technology, innovation, collaboration, you name it. But in this instance, it really was caring. It was connectivity. It was engagement. And so it was really nice, though early, to start the day in a relaxed environment where we could just let our hair down, literally and figuratively, and express what we were feeling, seeing, thinking, doing on our respective campuses in, I hate the language of safe space. I think we should all be challenged all the time as an educator, but I felt very safe. I felt like I was heard, seen, all the language our young people use today about the need to express yourself and to not be erased in any way. And so I thought it was beautifully done and a wonderful start to the day.
Okay. Now I know that mentoring and pouring into others is something that's is really important to you, because you've already you edited a book, the HBCU Sisterhood. And I'm just curious about, that room that we sat in, which I think that facilitation method can be replicated anywhere, just a table, people sitting around with some prompts that were very, they were not show pony. They were reflect on the experience of having to be courageous at work. Right. And I do appreciate that while the content is a lot at the summit, the topic of innovation and change, instead of being at a higher ed conference where we might be talking about the woes and just the problem of the day, which I've had a million of the same conversation, I did feel like we need more spaces to talk about how hard change and innovation is. Yes. And I'm just wondering, you having given your background, I'm particularly interested in how you choose who to pour into and who to mentor and support in your commitment to sisterhood, especially as someone who is trying to drive change. Yes. Like, I'm sure, do you find others that you select who are also doing change work, or is it just those who approach you?
So it's a combination of the two. The first is I am reasonably agnostic about picking and choosing people that I engage with. For example, whenever a woman president is named, particularly in the HBCU space, I typically send a note of welcome and engagement and offer my cell number and those kinds of things, because I'm 112 years old and I've been doing this for about 14 years. So I think I've learned a few things along the way that I'm willing and able to share. Unfortunately, the response rate to that outreach tends to be rather limited. Either it is the fire hose that you're drinking out of when you start a new presidency, or it is trust. Who is this person reaching out to me, wanting to talk with me? I'm not sure what the challenge is, but it's about a 10% response rate. And so people who respond and say, hey, I'd love to just chat with you about your experience, we tend to build relationships rather quickly, and I try to be present, as we say, because life happens at the speed of relationships. There will be someone I know somewhere, something I've seen, done, experienced, or suffered from that maybe I've learned something from that I can share and maybe head that off for somebody else. So that's really, really an important part of my side job, is mentoring and support of women leaders. I think they're just magic and do amazing things, but definitely need care and support too.
Yeah. So I know when starting a role how rare invitations like that email you send is, but I also know that when you're starting, you don't know, you have your guard up a bit more. in terms of not really knowing what, and yet later on, when someone's been in that role, I'm sure that they would understand just how, oh my God, it's like water in the desert. Because everyone does want something from you. And so if someone's actually just offering connection community, like that's, I mean, most of us are, I mean, you're on campus though, right? But the rest of it, we're working remote. So we're around, we're talking to people, but actually very lonely most of the day, right? So I appreciate that you do that. And I just want to encourage you, like, I promise that I think people should be saying, they should be responding.
Yeah. Well, I think, and while we are in a community, a learning community on a campus, the fact of the matter is the president has no peers on the campus. So we work closely with the cabinet, a chief of staff, your administrative team, and certainly, for air, we can get out and experience students, but you really have no peer on the campus. And I find that as a leader, it is important for me to be self-assured, to be confident, to be clear in my communication. As the young people say, don't give fear on the campus. And so the opportunities for vulnerability are very, very limited. The opportunities to just say, oh my God, I am overwhelmed today, I need a listening ear, are very, very limited. So while we seldom ask, sometimes you just need someone to extend the offer or the olive branch to you a little bit.
Roslyn, I just wanted to ask you, in your 112 years of being a leader, which you look great for 112, just tell us a little bit more about how you think about leadership in general, and what your leadership approach is and how that's developed over the years, and if you can pinpoint it to any specific influence or inspiration.
Sure. So that is several questions in one.
Yes, it is. Sorry, it's a bad habit of mine.
That's fine. I'll try to address it in a sort of linear fashion. First, as a leadership style, I tend to characterize myself as both informed and decisive. The informed means I prefer to surround myself with people who know more about a discrete, specific thing than I do, whether that's student affairs or academics or finance or enrollment or IT or whatever the nature of the cabinet member's responsibility is. I want that person to be the very best and brightest in their respective space, because I want to depend on that level of expertise when I'm making decisions. So we are incredibly collaborative at the cabinet level in terms of exchanging, challenging, disagreeing when necessary. So that once that information has been gathered and disaggregated and distilled and debated, I'm going to make the decision. At the end of the day, I am the president, and my responsibility is to consume massive amounts of information, distill it down to its syllabus points, and make a decision that is appropriate for this context in this moment. And so I am very decisive. Once I feel like I have all of the information at my disposal, I do believe a leader's ultimate responsibility is good decision making. And so I try to work closely with the folks that I surround myself with, and then again, convey a sense of confidence in my own leadership, in that I can make the best decision for the institution in this moment, in this context. And that becomes increasingly more challenging over time. I think what has occurred in my 14 years of leading a higher education institution is that my own perception of my capacity is different. So I dare say I'm less confident today than I was 14 years ago, because that was hubris. That was newness. I didn't know what I didn't know. So I might have been shooting from the hip to some extent without a context, without deep experience and having seen and done some things. I look back on my presidency in much the way people will look back at their dissertation and think, oh my God, it's terrible. Like at the moment, I thought it was the greatest piece of prose ever written when I submitted it that day, and even when I defended it. But in retrospect, I found typos. Oh my God, right? I mean, we see ourselves in the moment. And so as I look back on my younger self, my less experienced self, and see really arrogance almost. And I would hope that never would be something that people would say about me. But I think you know so little when you come into a higher ed environment. And yet, while you bring with you experiences and education and all those things, the presidency is unique and lonely and discreet, and it has no parallel. I was a provost, and I remember thinking 1,000 times, I'm practically the president now. I'm doing all the work. I'm running the campus. Not the same. as when your signature's on the paycheck, and the idea of whether you're going to make payroll rests solely with you. It's a very different decision-making model. So I think I have grown in humility. I think I have grown in wisdom just through age and experience, in being willing to listen a little longer, to withhold judgment, to reserve, to not say everything. The world is not going to be at a loss because I did not share my wisdom on each and every topic. I have learned to slow down and speak a little less, a little more purposefully. And I hope that that's been to the benefit of my institution. It does matter.
On that dissertation, which I don't know what you wrote it on, you and I did the exact same program. We did the Higher Ed Leadership and Policy program at Vandy, which I don't think I've met many others who are out in the field other than not like independently. So hello. So you did the every other weekend, like,
oh my God, yes.
pilgrimage for 3 years, every other weekend. It was,
I did indeed. And I had a baby in the middle of it. It was a blast. It was a blast. And it was, my topic was retention of non-traditional student population. So John Braxton was my
legend.
guy. I got to study under John Braxton. And of course, he did the work on Tinto's retention theory, and brought that down to about 8 things that really, really matter, more than the Tinto 13. And what I determined is that really it's one. It is engagement. It is out of class engagement. So we studied 2 or 3 schools that had block scheduling. So students who would take a 4-hour course at a time for 5 weeks, and that would free them up to either pursue sports or to work full time. So lots of adult learners, lots of programs that cater to athletes. But what we learned is that because a student takes their course and then goes to work, goes home, goes to practice, they're not engaged in campus activities. They're not engaged. They don't engage their faculty during office hours. They don't participate in student leadership experiences. And as a result of that, they're really on an island. So that sort of feeds the conversation that we were having earlier about mentorship and peers and having a connection to the place and space. And so we find that students who don't have those connections are not as successful in a linear fashion in terms of coming and graduating in 4 years. They simply will find many, many distractions along the way and not necessarily persist.
Yeah, that's great. So, Sara, the way that, so John Braxton was also my, he was the advisor on ours, is at Vandy, they don't let you do your dissertation on anything you're working on, which is very weird. Most places are like, you could 2 for 1, which
that's right.
At the time I was building the UIA, which would have been brilliant to actually have as a dissertation, but I respect that. I mean, it pushed me. And so mine was the poorest, most rural, smallest community college in Tennessee, applying many of the innovation kind of process redesign work to figure out what was going on for their students in that setting. I see the genius of it now, but you don't get to choose. They like draw out of a hat, basically.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so it's like, what are you going to spend the next, year or so working on? You find out.
Yeah. I was fundraising at the time. So to do retention work was completely outside
of course.
my wheelhouse.
Yeah.
And, what Vanderbilt gave me, besides a degree, which is lovely, actually, what they bestowed on me after I worked like a dog was a degree, which I appreciate. But what it gave me is a network of peers. So our cohort, 12 higher education professionals from varying areas. I mean, we had friends in, financial aid, friends in student services, friends in fundraising. And so what it gave me is a network of folks that I could reach out to once I became a president. If I had a financial aid question, I knew I could call Scott. If I had a student affairs person, I knew I could call Angie, or a question, I knew I could call Angie. So it really gave me the beginnings, the nucleus of a kitchen cabinet, if you will, of highly skilled professionals in varying areas. I think they were very intentional about the diversity of the cohort, so that you do create this network that can be tremendously valuable as you move through the ranks of higher education.
And we're not talking about the online one. This is something specifically hard about physically traveling to a place every other weekend, that your relationships are forged by fire. And half the class is like K-12 superintendents, and it's only 12 and 12, and then 12 are higher ed leaders. So I learned so much from that weird mixture. And I know that other people, it's not the same degree, the online one. It's like very different. This is very different.
So I think I learned as much at SATCO as I learned in the classroom. I mean, like our class would kind of walk down the street to the San Antonio Taco Company and over a bucket of beer and sort of rehash what we learned in class. So very much like a college campus, and my traditional undergraduate students, learning happens outside of the classroom as well. The relationships are built outside the classroom as well. So I think the brilliance of the cohort model really can't be understated. Vandy was one of the first to adopt the posse model, right? They understood the value of cohort education and people having community. And I think that's one of the things I'm most proud of as a Vanderbilt graduate. Now, I assume you and I would have both gone through at a time when those comps were still in place. I did not relish that experience. It was not fun, but also a crucible experience through which you traversed with your colleagues. I understand that in this online version, they no longer have comps.
Yeah, I don't know.
How fair is that? How fair is that? So it was a great experience.
I wanted to ask, I feel like we've kind of come back to where we started this conversation around community and just thinking about all the pathways to a college presidency, and some presidents go through programs like that or want to Penn or Harvard, and some of them just kind of come up through the ladder. And I wonder, Roslyn, if you feel that having that community and that cohort of people that you can call on provides that community of support for you that maybe presidents who haven't gone through that don't have?
Oh, I would absolutely agree to that. I think, again, there are many, many sort of products or programs on the market that purport to prepare people for the presidency. ACE, does a particularly good job. The ACE fellowship experience and some of those, I think, are all opportunities for you to experience education at a higher level and to develop critical mentorship relationships with leaders who have been there. And again, experience is a really good teacher. And while you're a first-time president, everybody was a first-time president the first time they became a president, right? I mean, there has to be some opportunity for you to learn and grow. And so I think, again, Vanderbilt did an exceptional job of that. But I know that there are lots of organizations, again, you referred to Penn and the work that happens there, that are creating that same kind of community. And I would strongly suggest that anyone who's interested in aspiring to the presidency should make an effort to join a program, to participate in a program. I think you don't know what you don't know until you get there.
Yeah.
I think that's, And I was just trying to think about, we came back from this conference where there were episodic experiences to try and fill in. I think we're all, as a community, as we come back out from COVID, we over-indexed on virtual. And there's, and yet, we also can see the emperor has no clothes when it comes to sometimes, why do I have to physically hurdle through space to be somewhere, right? So getting to a sensible approach on how we come together and how we, support each other is one part. But I think this piece about connection and community and the persistent lonely, like I got to tell you how many presidents I have had a conversation recently about how incredibly lonely these jobs are. And that, we have approached it thinking that the partner and spouse is essentially the unpaid labor chief of staff for and therapist for the university to some degree, because it's the only person who you can talk about most of the stuff with. Yeah. And other than that, and if you don't have that, then it is also just,
your dog becomes a victim.
Yeah. So it's very challenging.
You can frown on that. Kicking your dog is not good.
No, don't kick your dog. No.
Using your husband's not great, but kicking your dog's even worse.
I do think, and you're right, I did an ACE fellowship. A lot of these things are great for training. I do think there is a need to just focus on this issue, not always, because I feel like what I see is we are doing a lot of stuff to get to, we want to fill this need. We do a lot of stuff that allows us a microdose. And that is how I see the way higher ed engages and tries to share ideas and how things move. But there is a hunger for deep partnership, connection, community, mentorship, exactly the stuff you write about in your book. That I don't think we have the solution right now for 2026 yet.
So I would agree, but I think we have a common enemy. We have a common problem that you're articulating very effectively. And I think the reason for having a conference like ASU GSV, those same emails could have said, could I schedule a 15-minute Zoom to share a new product or service? Even the conference participants, those who specialize in ed tech and all things efficient, recognize the value of a face-to-face engagement to share a product or service or an idea or a concept. And so that's really important. I think we're all looking for that. And the book, which you mentioned a couple times, thank you very much for that. I am peacock proud of, because I've long wanted to give voice, particularly to women of color who serve in higher education. We are a very small micro percentage of presidential leaders in this country, even among historically Black colleges and universities. So you may know, fun fact, fewer than 100 women total have served as presidents of HBCUs. And so for even our minority serving institutions, for us to represent such a small proportion of the total leadership is an unusual thing. And so while the presidency itself is isolating, being a woman of color in this space is incredibly isolating. So when you think about peers, you have far fewer to choose from. And so the book was born both as a part of an ongoing research interest for me in terms of understanding the lived experiences of the women who have come before me and those who are serving alongside me. But it was intended, we selected 8 women presidents who had served a minimum of 5 years at their respective institutions. As you know, the ACE data says 5.9 is the average length of a presidency these days. So we wanted the women who contributed to have a body of work that they could discuss in the book. And it was supposed to be through the lens of triumph. Not a pain chronicle, it was so terrible, I was the first woman, they treated me terribly, it was awful, and all that's probably true. But we did not want it to be a book that really was a compilation of pain. We wanted it to be a triumphant, solution-oriented, this is how we overcame whatever obstacle the institutions were facing. And so it's Testimonies of Triumph and Transformation is the subtitle. So I'm really, really proud of the work. It'll be on bookshelves everywhere. Emerald Publisher is printing as we speak. So we're really excited about it and looking forward to opportunities to schedule some conversations with women. We hosted a kickoff summit here at Benedict where we invited all of the authors to take the stage and talk a little bit about their trajectories, and packed audience. People were really excited. So aspirant presidents probably saw little bits of themselves in each of the women. And that was the goal, to find a diverse group of women who had both similar and very, very different experiences leading institutions, to provide their stories in a very positive way that allows aspiring presidents, regardless of whether you're a woman of color or not, or whether, heck, a gentleman who might learn from the experiences of these women. So I'm excited. Really excited about the project and hope that it's an impetus for further conversation and connectivity in the space.
Perfect. Well, we hope that's the HBCU Sisterhood, and I don't have the date when it's coming, or I thought it was already out, but that's exciting.
Yes.
All right. Well, thank you so much for being on the show today. It's been lovely to get to know you. Welcome. Next time when you're at the ASU+GSV Summit, we will team up together and strategize to make sure it is a calmer experience for you. And Sara, excellent co-hosting. Really hope you also unpack your bag at some point.
Absolutely delighted to meet both of you, and look forward to meeting you in person someday soon. Apparently we were in the same place at the same time, but we will not miss the opportunity to connect deeply.
All right, great. I'll see you then.
Great.
Thank you. Have an awesome rest of the day.
Bye.